The final boss from the days of Medarot 5 and more or less the female equivalent to Archbeetle in many cases. It is DND00 Hardness 10, with a kit of Hyper Missile, Power Rifle, Mega Gatling, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Brilliance, which restores a small amount of HP to all parts a certain number of times when charging Metaforce. Now, in a game where, even just in Medarot as a whole, it's really difficult to find a lot of female types that are geared based on hard nuking, as more often than not, females typically specialize more in ailments or support-based skills, or even especially in healing skills, more so than offense one way or another. Hardness 10, on the other hand, takes all that and throws it right out the window, basically, as mentioned, serving as the Archbeetle to female Medarots with her high-end and high-damage output. Hyper Missile is a gunpowder-based skill that is not an AoE or a scattered AoE like standard missile or napalm will be, and instead grants piercing damage. This allows Hardness 10 a much more consistent form of breaking parts and having consistent damage, whereas scattered AoE or even regular AoE are more inconsistent. Power Rifle is arguably a very solid and conventional high-end shooting skill that gets a times 1.5 damage bonus when attacking as long as the user's legs are intact. Now, the only major weakness to Power Rifle in this case is the fact that during Hardness 10's cooldown, she cannot defend she cannot dodge or defend until she finishes her cooldown. Mega Gatling is a scattered AoE with the same times 1.5 damage effect as Power Rifle, but with it being a scattered AoE, it will damage one part normally and then two others at random at 1/3 damage. And the times 1.5 bonus arguably is what makes Mega Gatling much more desirable than standard Gatling, because it even includes the high success and high crit chance that standard Gatling does. Now, Mega Gatling and Gatling were also buffed fairly recently in previous months to where Gatling has no drawback or weakness in cooldown, and Mega Gatling simply prevents the foe from dodging, and they are still able to defend blows and tank it with minimal damage. Biped Legs honestly grant Hardness 10 very solid coverage on all terrains, and the Brilliance ability, even if it doesn't give her a lot of HP, will honestly give her a little bit of passive healing in cases where if she can't attack safely, she can at least recoup what was lost, or at least a small chunk of it, to keep herself moderately healthy. As a pure set score, and pretty much for the very reason that it's very difficult to find high-end female nukers like Hardness 10, and her by herself makes a lot of the female-only EX trials a cakewalk because of her high-end kit and her great flexibility. I do have to rate her a very solid 8.5 out of 10. She has very good armor, as you'd expect of a diamond type, very solid resist as well for tanking damage, very good power output. The only major weakness that Hardness 10 has is a relatively low mobility. More or less similar, I'd say, to like Decotom or Archbeetle pre-tune-up in some cases, where they may have the power, but they lack the speed to make up for it. But if you compare her off with a Medarotter, such as, say, Medarotter Pasala or someone of the like that can boost leg mobility, she can honestly overcome this very easily. And one other thing that does fit very nicely with Hardness 10 is the fact that none of her parts are heavy, which grants her the ultimate flexibility where even if her legs are broken, even without the damage bonus, she can still fight moderately well at a relatively decent pace. As mixed parts, I have to rate her higher at a 9 out of 10, and in many cases, some would even make a good argument for a 10 out of 10 and must-have, simply because of the fact that, as stated, female nukers like Hardness 10 are actually very difficult to come by and ones you don't see very often, even with all the new models that we are seeing introduced in Medarot S. So Hardness 10 is, pun intended, absolutely that diamond in the rough that you will never ever go wrong with using in cases where females only is required or no males allowed, and you're in need of a dedicated shooter that you can fit just about anywhere in a female team.